My name is Hunter Cheney. I'm part of the Collings Foundation. To give you kind of a quick background about the Collings Foundation, we're a 501c3 educational nonprofit foundation. We were founded in 1979 by Bob and Caroline Collings. The goal, the purpose of the Collings Foundation is to enable particularly Americans to learn more about our history, to learn more about world history, and to learn more about our heritage through direct participation. Particularly when it comes to understanding history. What is the most effective means to engage people in history? What is the most effective way that we can remember something that happened in the past, not only remember it, but identify with it, to better appreciate what happened in the past? That's where the Collings Foundation comes in. We organize and support living history events to do just that, to engage people in history. So we started out in early 1979 doing kind of turn of the century living history events, ice cutting festivals, sleigh rides, car rallies. One of the challenges that we're all faced with is, particularly in the realm of World War II history, how are we going to remember World War II history? How are we going to engage people in World War II history as a means to better understand it? It's events like this where we're trying to draw you into the environment to better understand it. We're trying to have you interact with history as a means to better understand it. The real meat and potatoes of what we do is a national living history tour of World War II aircraft called the Wings of Freedom Tour. This tour features the B-17 Flying Fortress, the B-24 Liberator, a P-51 Mustang, and a B-25 Mitchell. These planes for the last 24 years traveled to over 110 cities annually. So we start in Florida and do a giant zigzag loop all the way around the United States, eventually ending up back in Florida. It's a tour that's seen by over 3 million people every year. And it's all made possible mostly by volunteers all around the country. This is how we were able to get things done. We also have the Vietnam Memorial Flight Collection to honor our Vietnam veterans. That features F-4 Phantom Jet, Korean veterans for their T6 out there, and an F-100 Super Sabre, a Skyhawk, a Huey helicopter, same sort of thing, where when we bring these aircraft into each city, people have the opportunity to tour through them and go flying in them. And that is just a kick in the pants. It is really fun. It is one of the most unique things that you will ever do, is flying in one of these World War II aircraft. You can't believe it. It's just phenomenal. And so what ends up happening is that this is really the finest form of edutainment, is what I call it. And so we've been growing and growing and growing and doing more and more living history events. And this particular event was organized to help people, of course, better understand World War II. World War II is the worst, most horrific, terrible conflict that we have ever had to endure since we've been walking on this planet. It's estimated over 70 to 90 million people died during this war. A lot of bad things happened. A lot of things that we need to remember. We hope that through events like this, that particularly the younger generations want to learn more. Why this global conflict occurred. Why so many lives were lost. Remembering this history and what these young men did, young men, 18-year-old men, did during this conflict this war was fought primarily over one thing: freedom. The quality or state of being free. The liberation from slavery or restraint from the power of another. Men and women fought, men and women made the ultimate sacrifice for this one thing. Americans entered World War II and turned the tide of impending oppression and suffering. Men entered service and fought to preserve the freedoms that we all enjoy today. Freedom of religion, freedom of certain beliefs, the ability to question and challenge our leaders, the ability to vote and express ourselves without persecution. These are things that we need to cherish. This is what these young men were fighting for. George Washington said, "The willingness to which our young people are likely to serve in any war, no matter how justified, shall be directly proportional to how they perceive veterans of earlier wars and were treated and appreciated by our nation." Roosevelt said, speaking in reference to Mussolini and the German dictator Adolf Hitler, "Force is the only language they understand, like bullies." That is why I am honored to introduce to you our Veterans Roundtable this year. Our first veteran that we have is Mr. Frank Currey, Medal of Honor recipient. Mr. Owen Mahoney, Navy Quartermaster Amphibious. Bob Cotnoir, close, OSS. Joe Goslin, 8th Air Force, 95th Bomb Group. Mr. Dick Denning, 8th Air Force, 351st Bomb Group. We'll start with Frank here.
There you go. Hi, as Hunter already said, my name is Frank Currey. I'm a veteran of World War II. I'm going to briefly give a background to myself, but first I want to explain what we have here in the front. A gentleman who was here last year, and World War II veteran. He died in March of this year. His son, he left behind with his son a map of a European theater of the action that he was in. After the speak, anyone wants to come and watch that, the infantry divisions that went through Central Europe are outlined here. The key is here, it's labeled, and you come up if you wish to and examine it. Your key is here. Myself, I was with the 30th Infantry Division, one of the oldest groups in the American Army. Our insignia is the triple X with the OH. The OH stands for Old Hickory. This division was formed by Andrew Jackson in the War of 1812, and outside of a little unpleasantness in 1861, 1865, it's been on actual duty with either the United States Army or the South Carolina National Guard. Some people ask me, well, you're up there from upstate New York. How the heck did you ever get in that South Carolina National Guard? And facetious, I tell them, well, if you lived down there for a while, it's such they needed an English instructor. So much for my background. I was an orphan. My My father died when I was 5. My mother died when I was 12. Our social life at that time in rural upstate New York was much different than it is today. I was a ward of the county. I had no immediate relatives. And I took an examination in senior high school, and it was called the Army Specialized Training Program exam. On a national-wide level, it was a very difficult exam. I was very fortunate. In my high school, up in Sullivan County, I was the only one who passed it. And at that time, the deal was that if you enlisted in the Army, you had to do it before your 18th birthday. Because once you turned 18, you were subject to the draft and you could not enlist. To make it short, I got out of high school about 2 weeks short of my 18th birthday. I had all my paperwork done. All I had to do was be inducted into the Army. Here I am, a farm boy at that time, upstate New York. How in the devil could I get down to New York City? Well, come to find out, the postmaster, I read up all my papers, could induct you. So I went to our local post office in Hurleyville, New York, which no one here has ever heard of, and talked to the postmaster. He got his manual. He said, sure, I can do it. He said, raise your right hand, repeat after me. When he closed the book, he said, you're in the Army. So that's how I got in. Okay, and this program that I had passed, they selected 1,000 of us from the whole nation, and they sent us immediately into Fort Benning, Georgia, to the officer candidate school, right from civilian life. It was a test program. I might say that it didn't work out, but on my personal standpoint, it was the best thing that could have happened to me, because we all were 1,000. Only 60 of us were actually commissioned at the end of our 3 months training with the OC. But the training was fabulous, and we're all the same age, 18 years old. And when I left Fort Benning, Georgia, the OC, I could fire any weapon that the Army had, because at age 18, your mind is like a sponge. It can absorb anything. I got conned a little bit. After we finished the course, the regular OCs were made second lieutenants. Us 18-year-olds that didn't make it were sent all over the country. I was interviewed by a panel at the OC and said, look, the war in Europe is going to be over shortly, and they're going to need Europe rebuilding. If you will sign up after the war and join the Army Engineers, you got a fabulous career ahead of you. So if you want to sign up for that right now, you're in. So I said, hey, that sounds great. So I did. Then the month after that, I was in Cornell University taking an engineering course that lasted for 1 semester. I find out now that what happened, why I was sent to Cornell, that they had building up for the invasion so much they didn't know what the heck to do with me, so they sent me up there. At the end of that first semester, I was called into the ROC office. The colonel there said, hey, I looked under your paper, you've had infantry training. I said, yes, sir. He said, okay. He says, as of next week, you're back in the infantry. So that was how I got involved with that. I was sent to a training division at 75th, a horrible outfit. So, to make the story short, I tried to get out of that. The only way I could is be a replacement for overseas, which I did. So I missed the invasion of Europe. Franklin D. Roosevelt was the president at that time. He signed an executive order after the 5 Sullivan brothers were lost. The Army could not ship you until you're 19 years old, and I was about a month short of my 19th birthday. Well, I was very upset then because I knew the invasion was coming off, or we knew it, and I would miss it. So consequently, they sent me back to my 75th training. As soon as I was 19 years old, I was on my way out. Okay. It was not until September of 1944 that I finally joined my outfit, which was the 30th Division. We took the Netherlands, crossed into Belgium, back to the Netherlands to cross the Roer River. The Germans broke out in the Bulge in 1944, the 17th December. They immediately shipped my division from the Netherlands down to Malmedy, Belgium, to stop that German advance. So now a lot of people ask me, well, what did you do to get that Medal of Honor? So I said, so I'm going to cut my rest of it off, and I'm going to tell you what happened that day. It started about, first of all, if you read an Army citation, it looks like you did this so fast. So somebody say, well, how did you do all that in a half hour? It did not take a half hour. It was that covers a 24-hour action, which the Army has to condense into a few paragraphs. So anyway, we're there at Malmedy. The day before that, the 20th of January, an Army patrol, big Army, had gone out in front of us at Malmedy and said that they come back, and I heard him talk to my company commander and said, look, you are spread very thin up here. The Germans cannot operate armor out in front of you. All you have to be responsible for is this very important bridge here. He said, leave one squad of your men here to guard that bridge, because the most they're going to get is some German infiltrate. So, okay. The company dispersed. I have no idea where they went to. We had something like a 20-mile front, and they left 6 of us behind, or I'll take it back, because we wound up with 6. But they left 7 of us, of my squad, behind to guard this bridge, because all we were going to get was German input. About 4 o'clock the next morning, which would be December the 21st, I hear this clickety clank and the booming and all that. In our line of sight, we could see German tanks coming bumper to bumper. So much for Army intelligence. It's kind of an oxymoron, but okay. Well, here we are, six fellows. The lead German tank had broke through us. I'm going to bring this down fast. And they got through the bridge. Some outfit on the other side managed to knock that tank out, so the rest of them halted. Right beside this bridge had been a German or a Belgian paper mill. We ran into that. It had been the day before an U.S. Army hospital. That day, they had bugged out, and I mean bugged. They had left everything behind, including vehicles. If I had been qualified, I could have done brain surgery because they left their operating rooms there. So, okay. The layout of that factory was, it was like this table along the street, a lot of windows in it on the first floor. We broke the windows out, and us 7 guys would fire, run to another window, fire, and the Germans had a open space that they had to cross. Well, some of their infantry tried it and they didn't make it, so the rest of them all pulled back. Well, during the course of the day, we're sporadically fighting like that. One German tank did pull up right in front of us, and the day before, an anti-tank outfit had taken their gun up front, and they brought their half-track back and left it with us. I managed to get across the street into that half-track and found a bazooka. Myself, the World War II bazooka was a two-man load. We managed to knock that tank out with the bazooka with one round, a very fortunate shot. During the course of the afternoon, things got quiet. With my background of knowledge with the infantry, went out and head out of front of us. There were 3 German tanks and a lot of infantry. 5 of the guys from that anti-tank gun had been pinned down up there, and one of them was pretty badly wounded. And I could see that they couldn't get out until we got rid of it. During the course of the afternoon, I went back to the anti-tank vehicle. I found a whole case of anti-tank grenades in there. During the course, I managed to launch them, got rid of them 3 tanks, manned a machine gun up there that they had, and they were able to get back. They took their wounded man with them, left him with us, and they took off. So in the meantime, one of the fellows from my squad got hit pretty bad because the tanks had been firing at these windows a little bit. So here it's turning dark at night. They decided what to do. We're going to get out of here. We're surrounded now, and we're not going to leave the 2 wounded men badly behind. We managed to get a Jeep with 2 stretcher mounts. At that time, with my background, I was in charge. We found that one of us 6 could drive a standard transmission. Okay, you're going to drive. We load the 2 wounded on the stretchers, put them on the Jeep, and okay, now we're going to go back. It says it's probably maybe 10 o'clock at night, dark. We're going to get out of here. I told them, hey, I will ride shotgun with my Browning automatic rifle on the spare wheel on this Jeep, and we're going. If we get challenged by the Germans, I will hop off, engage them, and you guys get out of here. We went right past a burning German tank. We were never challenged. And we get out on the highway, which today is the Grand Prix up to some city in Belgium. And anyhow, here we are. 6 American soldiers. The oldest one is probably 21 years old in rural Belgium with 2 wounded people. What are we going to do? So we just keep going. Hopefully we will run into our own lines, which we did. It turned out to be a roadblock of another regiment of my division. Now we have a real problem. We're coming from the German side. We're challenged. We barter back and forth. They finally let us in. The first thing they do is take our weapons. They take our wounded, our Jeep. Nobody is believing what we're telling them. We go from echelon to echelon to echelon, battalion, regiment, division, back to my parent regiment. Finally, somebody with some intelligence said, hey, we better check this out. And they did. And consequently, it straightened out. 24 hours after the initial action, we are right back there in Malmedy in our initial foxholes by the bridge. So that was the end of that action. Okay. Now, as far as the Medal of Honor goes, I had three months of combat prior to this date, December 21. I had 5 months of combat afterwards. During the month of January, we broke out. We pushed the Germans out. I earned a Silver Star in January in a little town called Thurman. I took out a regimental command post of the Hermann Göring Paratroop Division. And then we crossed the Rhine River. In March, in the meantime, had been promoted as a platoon leader, acting first lieutenant. And during the course of going across Central Europe, one afternoon, I picked up a Bronze Star, taking out a couple of German machine gun nests that were holding us up, and eventually met the Russians up in Magdeburg on the Elbe River, about 40 miles to the west of Berlin. When we met them, war's over. That's it. It's over.
Up until a couple of minutes ago, I was a little nervous because looking in the back of the room were 2 German soldiers. What's going on? I thought this was America. You already applauded him, but what a wonderful feeling it was to sit beside this gentleman, a Medal of Honor winner. There it is, right here. United States Navy. I, like you, took the V-12 exam at Woonsocket, Rhode Island High School and was notified that a guy by the name, a fellow student of mine in the high school class, Donat Vincent, and I won the right to go to Tufts College, just north of Boston, and train in V-12 to be officers. I always wanted to be a doctor. I go to the skipper, lieutenant colonel, at Tufts College, and I say, I don't want the subject matter that you're putting me through now. I want to be an MD. He said, we're not going to allow you to be an MD. So I went back 7 or 8 more times and got transferred to the regular Navy, and subsequently went to D-Day on an LST, transferred to the aircraft carrier Lake Champlain to bring GIs back. There were 3,000 of us on the aircraft carrier, and 5,000 GIs going back to America. We did that 4 times over the Atlantic, and that's the extent of what I did. But along the way, there were some very amusing incidents. 18 years old is not very mature. I wonder, looking back on it, that I should have been terribly afraid. But I wasn't for some reason. It was kind of exciting. On June 5th, we leave Southampton, England. We knew 3 days before. They restricted us to our LST-56 because a quartermaster assists the navigating officer and the exec to plan your trip. So our trip was all planned. Photographs were taken by other people in the Army, and we had a picture of exactly where we were going in, at Omaha Beach. All of a sudden, we're about 1/3 of the way across the English Channel, and we turn around and go back home. I didn't know why we were going back home. The skipper didn't know why he was going back home. But Eisenhower called us back because the weather was too difficult, and we went out the next day. The next day was June 6, 1944. Going across the channel was cloudy. The weather looked like it was going to break into some sort of a storm. Overhead were a couple of thousand airplanes constantly going off. You couldn't see the clouds, airplanes. The bottom of the airplanes, particularly the Lockheed, I think they're called 38s, were striped, white and black stripes. So we wouldn't shoot down our own airplanes. I never saw such a force of airplanes in my life. Not only Lockheeds, all kinds. I can't even name them. And around me are all kinds of ships, 1,000 ships. The only one I could identify as we passed them was the Augusta, the cruiser, that Eisenhower was on, leading the biggest invasion in the history of the world. We had to hang off the beach by several hundred feet because an LST has Sherman tanks on it. It's got other equipment. It's got a couple of hundred GIs. It has LCVPs, 3 of them on the bow and 3 of them on the starboard side. An LCVP stands for Landing Craft Vehicle Personnel. The GIs on board, I didn't know why they were there. They were on the deck. We had bunks down below, but they were on the deck. 20 or so of them would hop into, well, first of all, we would lower down from the booms, 3 on each side of the LST. We would lower those boats down, the LCVPs, and then the GIs would go down the ropes and hop into the LCVPs, manned by one coxswain from the United States Navy. They went into Omaha, and I stood on the bridge because the quartermaster steers the LST. I was a quartermaster 3rd class. We had been with the skipper 3 nights before, looking at all these photographs and the specific route that we were going into Omaha Beach. And if you look at it here, it's really near Pointe du Hoc. Pillbox up on the top. Hills that went up about a little bit higher than the height of this hangar. And I watched our GIs going into Omaha Beach. I didn't talk about it. We happen to have 12 children, 6 boys and 6 girls. I happened to be in a movie theater when Saving Private Ryan was done. I had told Teresa a little bit about it, but not much. It wasn't that I was afraid of talking about it. It's just that I wanted to put it behind me. Because watching through the binoculars, which we navigation people had on the bridge, I could see everything that was going on. All of our LCVPs came back to us. But we didn't know what happened to our GIs that we had on the trip across the English Channel. Most of them died on the beach. It's 3,000, I think. I don't forget the exact figure. On that one beach alone, died in the first few hours. I grew up a little bit there. I wasn't scared, but I was amazed. I was amazed at the strength of the United States Army and the Navy, but particularly the Army. What we were doing, I didn't understand until after it was over. We caused all of us here today to not speak German. I think you're so right when our kids really don't appreciate what World War II is all about. It was a massive sacrifice by all of the guys that were particularly in the battles. Later on that, well, first of all, the first thing that happened sometime around noontime, the battle started at 6:30 in the morning. We say 06:30 hours. And we watched that for a while, and then the skipper put us on general quarters because he was afraid that we were going to get airplanes coming in. It wasn't until Private Ryan was shown as a movie, I think that's the movie we saw, where these two poor Luftwaffe pilots are someplace in a German base near Calais, France, and they're saying, oh my God, we're asked to go and stop the invasion. You remember that? I'm strapped to a 20 millimeter gun on the starboard side of the LST. We had two 40 millimeters on each side of the bridge, but 20 millimeters in the bow and in the stern. And I'm strapped, and I got a trunnion operator and a loader. One does things with my gun, and a 20 millimeter is about that long and about that, and every third bullet is incendiary, so you can see where it's going. Two Luftwaffe planes come down from this side of the beach and strafe the beach with our guys on the beach. And every single LST, there must have been at least 20 of them in my area, just like our ship, fired every 20 millimeter gun at those two aircraft. We got them, right? No. They went all the way down the beach once and must have had a alimentary defecation problem by the time they finished. In other words, they in their pants, all right? Because the fireworks were tremendous. 4 or 5 of the barrage balloons that we had on cables going up from the bow and the stern to protect us from airplanes coming down and strafing us. We had big barrage balloons, one big there and one big behind us, all right? 5 of them came down in flames. I'm firing at the planes. Everybody's firing at the planes. But jokers in my group, it's a small, 100 guys, 100 sailors. The very next day I go up to the bridge to take my tour duty, 4 on, 4 off, that kind of thing. And there on the conning tower is a barrage balloon about this big with my initials under it, characters. Anyway, I shot down a barrage balloon. They wanted to tell everybody in the world, our world being 100 guys. So anyway, there were a lot of humorous things. The very next day, we pulled our ship off the sand of Omaha Beach with our stern anchor. The reason we went in late, we had to go in at high tide. The reason we got out at all was that we did exactly that, pulling ourselves off. Couldn't use the motors right away because we were too close to the sand, pulling off with the stern anchor. And in where we had the cargo deck with Sherman tanks on it and other vehicles that we opened up and put on about noontime, and they croaked, the beach marshal was there directing everybody like a traffic cop, and the tanks and other vehicles and men were going up a skinny kind of a path over the hill behind us. And into our open jaws of the LST wounded and dead were carried in. I didn't know we had a contingent of doctors and nurses on board. And so right after the invasion, the very next day, we brought patients back to England and dead back to England. And there were about 5 or 6 Germans there as well. There was no discrimination at that point. They were just dead and wounded, and they needed to be taken care of. And we had 5 or 6 more visits back and forth over to the same beach, and one visit would be prisoners and one visit would be hospital. And then just before I left the LST, I took my duties with some seamen that we had trained on how to, the helm is about this big with spokes. You've seen helms. And we went along the beach of Gold and Juno and Sword through Le Havre, up the river to Rouen and back. And all the way up the river on both sides, on both banks, were wrecked equipment. German tanks, American tanks, jeeps, all scarred, some of them still smoking. I'm going to take that trip, I hope, sometime in May, to stand on the beach where I stood, escorting hospital and prisoners on board. And I'm also going to try to take the trip going from Paris to Normandy and see where I might have shot down a barrage balloon.
My name is Bob Cotnow. Am I talking through this? Oh, all right. My name is Bob Cotnow. I'm forgetting in my old age, so bear with me. I had 3 brothers in the service, and I was the youngest to go in, but my mother would not let me in for the simple reason I was only 17 years old. So, she says, I got enough over there, she says, and you're not going until I sign or you're going to be drafted. So I was drafted. And after I got drafted, I ended up in Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and I was transferred to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and, oh boy, thanks for the bottle. North Carolina, and then I was shipped to Camp McCall, North Carolina. Now, I don't know how many. Thank you, very kind. So, I'm in Camp McCall, North Carolina. You're not going to believe this. I was into an outfit called the 465th Glider Field Artillery. Gliders, I says, what the heck is that, you know? So they says, you know, those things that fly around without a motor. And without a motor, yeah, well, that's when they attach the plane to pull the glider, and believe me, I don't mind going up in a glider, but I'll never go up into another one if it doesn't have wheels under it. This was right on the floor of the glider. So the best thing that happened to me is when they asked for volunteers to join the outfit that I ended up with. The OSS is the forerunner of the CIA, and we were to go out and learn how to do guerrilla warfare. So guerrilla warfare is, to operate behind the enemy lines and see what you could do, what they wanted us to do. So, all right. I ended up in Fort Bragg, back again, got my parachute training, and now we're going overseas. First thing you know, the mission to go into France. You all know that the Germans took over France in 39 or 40, whatever it was. I can't remember all these days. I'm French. I can't go that far. So anyway, I lose my train of thought. Bear with me. So when I got to France, no, I didn't get France that way. Bobby, help me. Oh yeah, that's right. I jumped out of a B-24. So I'm saying, you know, when you're taking parachute training, the time that you're supposed to do is you jump out of a side door of a C-47 or a C-46. But now they turn around and tell us, you're going to have to learn how to go out of a hole. What do you mean, go out of a hole? And, you know, on a B-24, that's a bomber. It's not a C-47. And so what you're doing up there is you're sitting down with your feet dangling through the hole, and you just push yourself out. That's what you do. So I said, I'll be done. I says, so on the way to leaving England, I usually talk with my hands, but this thing is holding me up here. So bear with me. The B-24, you push yourself out. Oh, now I'm talking to the jump master. He's the one, instead of dropping bombs, he's going to drop 5 of us into France. So now here I am. They say, you're number 1. I says, I'm not supposed to be number 1. I'm supposed to be number 3. Yeah, but we're really afraid that number 3 is going to freeze up there. And if you freeze up there, you know, in order to keep that plane up in the air, oh, I'm using my hands. In order for that plane to stay in the air, it can go only, the least it can go is 140 miles an hour. So if this man here is going to freeze up there, that plane at 140 miles an hour is going to drop him way over there. You follow me? And he's no good, because he'll be in the Germans' hands in no time at all. However, they said, we're going to put you number 1. Now there's 5 men, north, south, east, west, and the one in the back, to push him out if he freezes. But he's going to be number 3. See? So what happens is, I told, oh, there goes the left hand. I asked the jump master, I says, how high are we going to be? He says, 400. He says, 450, somewhere in there. Well, lo and behold, I guess the intelligence wasn't very smart, I'll tell you that one there. They dropped us. We found this out when we got back to England, and we met, believe it or not, the jump master in a pub. And that's the place to go, in a pub back in England. You know that. That's where they hang around. So, so I met him, and he says, I thought we were supposed to go to jump, and 425, 450. And he says, no, he says, they drop you, or he says, at 300 feet. Now, if you know, when the chute is open, it don't take long for you to get on the ground at 300 feet. So I ended up, I'll tell you, I ended up on the ground, and I got a concussion and a dislocated hip. So between the jump, now this is a night jump. I mean, you can't see nothing that night, and out we go. So with 5 of us in there, this mission started at 36 people in 6 planes, 5 people to each and every plane. Well, my plane found the dropping zone, and so I went out, and the other 4 followed me. So what happens is they, oh boy, this water's good, you know. So I find myself the distance in time that when I hit the ground, and there's a nice sun out there, which happens to be the next morning, with a doctor over me to take care of my hip, and I was lucky that he did put it back together. And but I was talking crazy like I am right now. And our mission was to protect, because the Germans are going back to England, to Germany. Yeah, I got that right. While they're going back to Germany, the French intelligence is telling us that there's seven zeros that they want to give up because they need medical help, but they are only going to give up to the Americans once they found out that we were on the ground, because we were blowing bridges before that, you know. So, sure enough, let's see. I don't talk about this very much, so that's why. But again, I'm only 16, and I should know it, you know. So. Our mission was to protect, I say protect, the hydroelectric plant that gave all of this electricity in southern France. They wanted it to be saved. Otherwise, there was big trouble there without that power. Well, sure enough, the 70 who wanted to give up, I was on a mortar, and there was 2 other mortars with my mortar, the British 3-inch mortar. And we were to pick up these 70 Germans that were sick or hurt, whatever. Well, come to find out, that didn't happen. There wasn't 70. There was more than 700, for Christ's sakes, and they were coming at us. So we says, holy Jesus, look at this. So on that day, the thing that saved us, because the first plane that came out was mine, like I said, but the other 6 planes didn't come, went back to England loaded with the people they left England with. But they come in the following day. So now when the planes went back, what happened is they says the plane is empty. So we said, so what? You know, they're saying, so what? I'm saying, so what? You know, but I'm finding this out after it all happened. So whenever I see fog in the morning, always reminds me of that day when it was foggy, you wouldn't see your hand in front of your face. That's how foggy it was. I did not see a German that day, and he didn't see Americans that day. But what happened is we lost 3 as prisoners of war because they were protecting us, the mortars here and them on our flanks. on each side. So they took we lost 3 prisoners of war, but they were saved. We found that out after the war, because General Clark's army was working his way up the boot of Italy, and he bumped right into the people who got our 3 prisoners of war. And I'm telling you, they're going home and have a ball, because that's it. It turned out all right, believe me. So now, as it's a long time, you know. Yeah. The order came out for us to clear out of there and drop everything you got and go out towards the rear. Well, here I am. What happened between that, we ran out of mortar shells. So in the car that we took over from the German on a previous trip, that we had some rounds there. So I told my buddy on the mortar, I says, look, I'll go get you some more ammunition. So, because that was in the trunk of that car that we got from the Germans. They didn't give it to us. We had to take them. But anyway, that's what happened there. So this fella here, I'm walking up I get back to the where the truck is. We had a low bed. Where that truck is, that's the fellows who saved the hydroelectric plant. They're all sitting on that low bed and waiting for me to come back. But they're forgetting that I left a man behind. And so they're saying, okay, let's go, I said, what do you mean, let's go? I said, you can't go. I said, I got Barry out there. That was his name, Ray. I got Ray over there, and he's waiting for some more rounds. No, you got to drop everything. I said, for Christ's sake. I didn't ask for anybody to help me. I just turned around, I grabbed a Thompson submachine gun, and I'm going up and get him. So I went up there myself, and I met him halfway, and here he is. He's carrying the sight, the tube, and the base plate, and that's heavy, I'll tell you. And he's carrying that out by himself. So as soon as I got to him, I grabbed the base plate, because that thing was higher, weighed more, and we saved that mortar, but we lost the other 2 for the simple reason that they pulled out of there and they left everything the way they were told to do, is to drop everything they got and pull out towards the rear. And that's how we got out of there. Now we're in there for 6 weeks, and we can't get out of there because D-Day was ready to start. So D-Day happened. Now we're working our way towards Paris. Once they took care of Paris, they took over Paris, and so now we finally had to wait there in Paris for a plane to take us back. So to London, to London, England. So once we got a plane, we went back. Now they turn around and ask you, you want 30 days at home? Yeah, we want 30 days. That's a lifetime, for God's sakes. So get home, what a disappointment. My mom, my dad, and my sister. So, see, I come from a family of six boys and 2 girls. And I had 3 brothers in there. You're talking LCIs. I'm talking LC guys. You were talking LSDs. Okay. I had a brother in the LSI, which is Landing Craft Infantry. And sure enough, one of my brothers was he was the one that was taking them into the shore of Normandy, and back and forth, and he couldn't swim a stroke. So anyway, he got out of there alive. I got another brother that was in the 465th Glider Field Artillery. I said, Glider Field? No, he was in artillery. I was in the 465th Glider Field Artillery. So, hey, bear with me, please. I'm almost done. I'll cut it short. So anyway, sure enough, and the other fellow was in combat engineers. So my mother said there was enough there, and you're not going until I sign. But I had to wait until the draft came, and they drafted me. And that's what happened to me. And the best thing that ever happened to me is keeping away from the gliders, believe you me, because they were called flying coffins, and believe me, they were. Anyway.
Hello, my name is Joseph Gosselin. I'm, I passed my last birthday was 93 years old, so. Hunter tells me that I got 10 minutes to tell you what I did for 3 years. Well, it started then after Pearl Harbor. I joined the Air Force, the Air Corps at that time, because I didn't want my number to come out, and I had a choice to get which service I wanted to get into. So I joined the Air Corps. So my process took me back across the country 4 times in my travels. I went from Boston to Devens to Grand Island, Nebraska, to St. Louis, and went to, then it was classified as aircraft mechanics in St. Louis. And so they shipped us to the West Coast on Ocean Park, California, which is outside of Santa Monica. And we spent 7 days as aircraft mechanics. We were living in hotels, but the hotels at that time, everything was stripped but a foot locker and a bunk, army bunk. And they give us a paper bag for lunch. They took on a school bus, and took us to Inglewood School of Aeronautics, and we spent 6 months there learning how to repair aircraft, and mainly it was the engine. The rest of the craft took a little maintenance, but the engine was the main thing. So we finished the 6 months there. We went to El Segundo, Douglas Aircraft, and we worked on A-24 dive bombers. And then they put us, after we completed that, they shipped us to back to Hunter Field in Georgia. And there, when we got there, from traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast, it took so long that our outfit that we were supposed to join had moved overseas. So we were orphans on the base, and we weren't attached to anybody. But they put us in charge as crew chief for these crews. And for 1 year in the service, as an aircraft mechanic, we still were privates. So we had no rating at all. So, and at that time, we asked about, we were assigned to crew chief on these different aircraft, and he said, well, these people here are corporals and sergeants. That makes no difference, you're crew chiefs. We give them the orders. And then we complained about the time in service. We were 1 year into service without a leave. So they said, well, put your name down and we'll go by the seniority. Well, we outranked the whole base. Nobody else had any longer than we did. So they gave us a 10-day leave. About that time, we were free. We weren't attached to anybody. So we decided, some of us decided to go see the cadet training, ask if we can go to the cadet training office. So we had to take the exam. And during the exam, then they classified as aircraft mechanics. So they transferred her from the Army to the cadet training. And so they shipped us from there. I wound up as classified as a bombardier, and they shipped us to Big Spring, Texas, and for practice dropping the bombs. After completed there, after graduation, well, we had to get discharged one day, August 4th, 1940. That was 43, 1943, yeah. And we had to get discharged because the next day we were classified as second lieutenant, as bombardiers. And so when you get to that stage, when you're an officer, you have to figure out your own transportation. You're not, the Army doesn't push you around. So we had to travel up to Eureka, Washington. And so we decided, well, we got to find transportation all the way to California and then take the plane from California to Washington. Got there, and that's where we were assigned to, where we formed a crew. That was the first time we met any of our crew members. And we had a 9-man crew on a B-17. We flew practice missions there and went to, shipped us over to Oregon. We did some more flight training there. And from there, they said, well, you're ready to go overseas. So we said, well, how do we get back? Well, we got to get up to Washington again. So we figured out our own transportation, and we paid somebody who was on, came back from on transportation on a truck, one of these colored fellows on the truck. And so we paid him to take us up to Washington. We had to go over the mountains up to, from Oregon to Washington. And from Washington, we got on a plane, and we had to go to Grand Island, Nebraska. And so they gave us 10 days. 10 days to go to Grand Island, Nebraska. And when we got to Grand Island, Nebraska, after processing, they decided to ship us overseas. So they had 2 aircrafts that they had to go overseas. The Air Transport Command usually flew the aircraft to overseas. So they assigned half of our crew on one airplane and the other half on the other airplane. And we flew, we had to fly those planes overseas. From Nebraska, we went to New York, up to Dowfield, Maine, and then out on the island, one of the islands, and then we went to, flew across the ocean to Belfast Island. And it took us all night. We took off at 9 o'clock at night. We got there about 5 o'clock in the morning. Flew all through the night. And when we got to Belfast Island, they call it, we had to land at Nuts Corner, they called it. I said, why did they call it Nuts Corner? This is Belfast Island. When we got there, we knew why they call it Nuts Corner. So from there, we went to transportation down to another place here for processing, and they assigned us to Air Force, different groups of Air Force. So we were attached to go to Horham, England, and that was our base of operation. So we were assigned to 95th Bomb Group, 412th Squadron. And after that, we got there, and so after flying a few practice missions, flew my first mission on December 31st, 1943. That was it's supposed to be a pleasant trip, but it wasn't. They assigned a veteran pilot to fly the plane, and to show us the ropes, you know. So we went on there as our pilot flew as co-pilot, and the veteran pilot flew as pilots. And so we, after starting across on that mission, we were in number 3 position on the 3rd left of the lead plane. And when we crossed, hit right over Holland, there was a flak burst come up from the ground right in front of the nose of the lead plane. And first thing you know, we saw the lead plane waver and take a turn left and passed right in front of us. And our veteran pilot thought that was part of the procedure, so he did the same thing. Before he realized they were going back to the base, there was some damage to those, because the flak had burst so close to the front of the plane that the damage, somebody was killed or something on there, you know, and there were injuries on the base. So about that time, he decided to turn around and try to catch up to the formation. And the formation was in the distance. And in the process of trying to find out, our tail gunner says, was a fighter at 6 o'clock. So evidently he panicked and he started to catch up. So he says, get rid of the bombs. So he, instead of telling me to open the Bombay doors and drop the bombs, he pulled the handle in the cockpit. And that was a flak burst. I mean, the Bombay doors just flew open and everything. The 500-pound bombs just went out all at once. But then the Bombay doors are open, but there's no way to close them, because once you salvo the bomb, there's no way to close them electrically, because they disconnect from the rods that hold them open. So I had to go back. We were at 20,000 feet, so we had a walk-around bottle for oxygen, and that we could breathe. So I carried I had no parachute because I wouldn't fit. I had to go back to the radio compartment. So I had a walk-around bottle. I get to the Bombay doors. I crawl up between the top gunner's legs to get through the Bombay doors and into the Bombay. When I got in the Bombay, I couldn't fit between the catwalk there. It was too close, too narrow. So I had to climb over the open Bombay by holding onto the rack and getting back to the radio compartment. When I got back to the radio compartment, I picked up a crank and started back. I got halfway back and the plane lurched, and I dropped the crank and it just held down to the rack, before falling out. And so I slid down into the nose. I was running out of oxygen, so the navigator plugged me in. After I got my breath back and everything, I started a second trip back. I finally got back to the radio compartment, and I got back to the front, and I cranked the worm gear down to the bottom of the doors, and that way they closed electrically, So my first mission went without bombs as an escort on that troop. So that continued. Then after that, that was December, from 31st of December 1943. I flew 19 missions, and on the 19th mission, our 95th Bomb Group was the first group to fly daylight mission over Berlin. They'd never gone that far in the daytime, and so about 10 o'clock in the morning, we observed some ME-109s flying at 1 o'clock high. So he said, I said, watch them, they're coming around. So they went around the whole formation, and when they got to 11 o'clock high, they peeled off one after another. And they came right down our throat, and they were on the left. And there I am with twin 50s on the bottom, just firing away as fast as I can. And I could see those shells coming at me. Because the ME-109s fire a 20 millimeter shell just out of the crankshaft, And I could see those things coming at us once I did. And evidently, one of it hit us, number 2 engine. I looked around, the number 2 engine was shut down because evidently we got hit right there. And first thing you know, my pilot, the next thing I heard was the pilot says, "Get your ass out of here, we're going down." So I turned around, I found my chest chute, stuck it on, and opened the trap door, which is right near in the nose of the plane, right down. And I stood there, and I called the navigator. I says, "Go ahead." He said, "What about the bomb site?" I said, "If they don't have it now, they never will." With all because we lost so many planes during 1942, flying daylight missions, that they must have had bomb site by then, So when I waited there, and then the co-pilot came down, I says, "Go ahead." So he went out. Then when my pilot came down, I says, "I'll see it." Out I went. So at 20,000 feet, you can't breathe between 20,000 and down to 13,000 feet with lack of oxygen. But I went out anyway, and the next thing I knew, I had the crank still in my hand, and the chute was open. So in that day, I reached a profit, but I hit the ground on the plowed field. As a matter of fact, on my trip down, floating down, I could see chutes flying in the air, the white chutes and the tan chutes, because the white chutes were the American, the tan chutes were German. And Then in the distance, I looked at the FW-190 was flying by. So you read about these things being shot while you're coming down in the chute. Well, I thought that was me, so I waved at him, and he waved back at me. So I said, well, I'm all set. So I landed on a farm, on a plowed field, and as I'm walking out of the plowed field with my parachute, one of the home guards came in. At that time, there wasn't a lot of the small villages and all that had home guards, you know, for soldiers. And so they picked me up and brought me to a central meeting room in the village. And I was the first one in there. And throughout the day, numerous soldiers came in, you know, numerous pilots, enlisted men, officers and that. And some were on my crew, there was 2 others on the crew who were in the same area. And then there were different other people. I said, well, we weren't the only ones shot down, so there were a number of crews and that were shot down there. So from there, they took us down to, on train and took us all over. This was in the northern part of Germany, and took us down to near Oberursel, which was down near Frankfurt, Germany. And that's where they interrogated you, you know. And when they interrogate you, you're supposed to give you a name, rank, and serial number. But then the officer that was interrogating me was asking me these questions. I surmised that he was not Army, was not a German Air Force officer. He was impersonating a Red Cross worker, you know. So I refused to give anything else but my name, rank, and serial number. So he says, he was pleasant. He took me to a room, he sat me down, and I walked in that room, and there was a chair. I sat down in a chair. Oh, he said, I got a better one for you. He says, come with me. Took me to another room. There was nothing in that room. No chairs, no nothing. I had to sit on the floor. So from then on, they kept me for 3 weeks. And I never saw the rest of my crew during that time. And so until he kept calling me in for interrogation, never give him any more than the American Citizen number. Then on about the second week, he called me in. As I'm walking into the room, I look at, and my tail gunner's there, you know, and he's walking to him. He said, you know this airman. So what was I going to say? So I says, yeah. He says, you ought to. He's your tail gunner. So he sat me down. It's okay. You want to ask me some more questions? I refused to give him any more. So he said, you can go back and rot for all I care. So, and about a week later, I asked to see him again, you know. Maybe he was going to ask me some more questions. Well, he said, I guess we can let you go now. We know enough about you. He decided the mission I was on, my commanding officer, and he said, you know, Lieutenant Irwin? I says, I don't remember. He said, you ought to. He used to bunk with you in Big Spring, Texas. So I said, not everybody gives you a name, rank, and serial number. And I think it was last week I was reading on about the colored pilots that you flew the red tail P-51s, and he was saying he was captured by the German. And he says, when the officer, they started interrogating, he says they knew more about him than he did himself. Because he said they had books of when he graduated from the college where they in the United States. And from there, they let me go. So I went to a trenching camp in the town of Frankfurt, Germany. And that was a place where they sent you to hold you until they decided what prison camp to send you to. And I got there. The second day I was there, they had an air raid by the English, dropped the air raid. And Frankfurt was the target. And we were in that area, the target. And so as the anti-aircraft guns and the searchlights were fighting, you know, getting the English planes, you know, flying overhead, where they yelled, let's get down, because there were 2 newly built bomb shelters on both ends of the field. And so everybody better get down. So we all started to go from the ground. And about then, it felt as though the whole thing heaved right up and let down again. So the RAF usually dropped those 2,000-pound bombs, and evidently one of them hit about 50 feet from us, and it picks us right up and slams us right back down of it. So we come out of there. There was not a building standing for 100 yards in all directions. Everything was gone. So, as a matter of fact, I couldn't move my feet, you know, and I was wondering, fell a little match. I thought, oh my God. The fellow next to me had his skull split right open the back here, laying across my legs, you know. So I had a towel, so I put it down and put him on it, but we saw him breathe his last breath, you know. He was it. Yeah, almost done. So the camp I was at was the Great Escape took place. I got there the same week the Great Escape took place from the English compound. So then we had to get out of there, and on April 29th, the Russians were moving in close to the camp, so we had to get out of there. We were coldest winter on record. We had to walk out of there for 64 miles in a raging snowstorm, and we wound up at Moosburg. And at Moosburg on April 29th, the Patton's 14th Army liberated us. And from there, we went back to Camp Lucky Strike, is where they processed us to ship us back. And we took a ship back to the U.S. Thank you.